I think my mind has a mind of its own. Some would call this an identity pit. I call it gnosis. I call many things as they are to me. My mind has other plans. My mind wants to see me healthy. It wants me to take my jaws waiting for death off the curb. I just want to kill off everything. Make specious and trivial everything. Deny the personal as damaged for all time. That's it exactly. It is impossible for anyone to break apart like that. Nietzsche called insanity a delight in unreason. I think that's more accurate than the whole doing the same thing and expecting a different result jargon. Sanity is in us. I think maybe it returns to us after we die. The most deteriorated soul. Still better than a dead star. The explosion might create planets. But the mind as a purity sans destruction. We all have half a mind to destroy the other half of our mind we don't quite understand. But, like a magician, it won't reveal its secret. Not ever. I suppose it's true that when I jumped the second time, I expected to hit the ground harder than ever. But worse, I was suspended by a rope, drifted easily to the ground. A leap of faith sometimes needs a harness in that way. The faith involves the notion that one will not fly but die. Or break. Or enter a stupid wilderness of schizophrenic denial. Denying not reason, but denying that one is not reasonable. The fact is, language is that harness that will always be a tautology. That is, that harness, that safety that can't be touched by the sabotage we all strive to replicate in seeing as nothing, but an oddly there and extent redundancy. A redundancy that, because whatever created the universe is a fucking dunce, ends up being, well, pretty much the way things are. But maybe it's not so dunce-like. Because anyway, we are very wounded as people who think the whole Cartesian method irks me. But damn does it make me think. That doubt involves understanding the lay of the land first. Only that which we cannot understand we cannot doubt, which was his explanation of God, at least as far as I can tell. I've only really scoped out Descartes, but I like it. Very methodical. It's a bit like what Schopenhauer said about being a hypocrite. It involves intellectual finagling in the same way. That it is hypocritical to deny one is talented when they are, to call themselves mediocre. Saying one thing while doing something different. Like a strange logical inverse. If reality was as it is to us, that is, as the raw nerve, we exactly don't see it as, then maybe the soul, whether material or whatever, would be ruined. If I called myself a charlatan, I'd be closest to killing myself, and would generally feel shitty and bummed otherwise. The fact is, we are all insane. All broken and blessed and whatnot. Simply because reality is a useless ideal that is useless to get to the bottom of, because in any case it would still amount to some spectral apparent reality that must be so, as the limits of the mind must be so, so as to ward off the ever under attack unreal part of the mind that is the soul, basically, a material or maybe an infinite object without the ability to degrade. Who knows? I'm tired as fuck and pretty messed up, and yet I delight in unreason just to bleed into my skull, voracious for some triumphant sense of loss. More fodder for the poems, I suppose. But loss is loss. We're limited from being able to encroach upon the part of ourselves we do not understand, so as not to doubt its existence, since it is no matter whether it is, but why it does. But then I guess the reality never before us, before our eyes, must be pretty damn scary to need language to distance us from it. But imagine cavemen. Cavemen just kind of dwelled in some anguishing, immense silence all the time. And eventually the crossover came about, and the species couldn't take having to guess without a conclusive rapport with other cranial beings. However vastly shrunk, they probably started to see the soul of this planet in themselves too. And like an animal baffled, they themselves didn't understand the sensation of being baffled. Made words to try and figure it out forever. Old did cavemen or grunting hunter-gatherers know that this creation would light a fire under humanity's ass. And for all time, everyone would be obsessed, maybe so wrong, with the truth. With getting back to those perverse, soulless, tongueless roots. Words are the soul, I guess, is what I mean by suspending us above the ground upon the leap. And anchoring us down. Whatever created everything probably figured this would happen. But then again, maybe God is just a file clerk. Maybe Earth total is one file. At most, the first shit to deal with would be atrocities in Africa, or starvation in India, or, well, I could go on. Kidnapped girls from Nigeria. All the horrible shit that goes on a daily basis. Like clockwork. Like a thing that repeats itself. Because we as people had the bright idea that we were actually reasonable instead of seeing ourselves as perverse. As primitive peoples. Animals. Blessed. Unknowing they were blessed. To now, as I see it, people who think they know. You have to suffer for knowledge. You have to really suffer. You have to expand your mind, but preceding an agonizing withering of self and body for a long time. The party basically revolutionized the way we look at poetry. The miserable fuck developed a hunchback and bad eyes from studying by candlelight for hours on end. And guess what? He was in his parents' clutches until the last years of his life. A mind wants itself to not be known. To be content, but also spread its wings. Pardon the bromide. But that's kind of fucked, because a little bit of both often looks the same as all or nothing. But now I'm loading all you reading this with confusion. Frost had a good way. He said, be whole again beyond confusion. He is right. Fucking right. So right I get a boner just thinking how right he is. Forget about being confused. Delight in unreason is not being something wrong with you, but just the nature of our minds. Secretive. Beautiful. Protective of the self in us. Protective of sanity, rather. Selfhood I am still working on. Autonomy, independence, finding a job. Well, this is screwball as all hell, isn't it? Did you even understand my poem? Good. Doesn't matter. Just as figuring out real and not real is about the same as Descartes refusing eggs too long under the ass of the chicken. I'm not a proponent of intellectual laziness. No. But we have to work carefully to the point of hunchbacks to make systematic sense. We've got to really be okay with only being, and ever only being, able to rest in a continuum of words and limits. It helps us save who we are Helps that part of us, sacred and sane, never die. And maybe losing that one part of us that baffles the animal in us is exactly what we need to see that purity, that soul. For the soul is exactly nothing. And even if we rot in the ground, that's still pretty amazing. Lack of consciousness, I would imagine, as being a higher form, a higher understanding. Not necessarily because consciousness muddles, but rather that it is an extra layer. Perhaps necessary to maintain our material nothing. Our sanity, that is. Sans redundancy, unharnessed. Because finally able to swoop into the air.